Good morning and welcome to Easier Habits Live, where I, Alec Sorensen, and very often my wife, Meg Sorensen, take you behind the scenes in our businesses. We'll do morning strategy sessions. Of course, this is the last day that Meg is out of town, at least until holidays, etc. So this is our last solo episode for this week. We'll do a couple of together episodes Tuesday, Wednesday, and probably have something pre-recorded for those hardcore people who are watching business videos over Thanksgiving break. This episode is going to be special and uniquely difficult for me because I'm going to try and get a little bit more personal and vulnerable than I would normally like to do, but the whole point of this channel is to take you behind the scenes and to give you an idea of what you're in for. I am being a solo dad while trying to work, and of course I'm not doing a ton of work over the weekends wherein I have my kids full time, but a lot of what I had to do over the weekend related to work is mental game, and realizing there were some thoughts that I was avoiding that I would have to work out if I wanted to be productive this week. So I'll get into some of the challenges and things I would do differently as an entrepreneur couple. I will get into some of my personal frustrations and how I work through them. And of course, we'll have our usual communication and business tips. So if this is the kind of thing that you're looking for, not just in theory, what should you do, or another listicle of do X in theory, you try it and it doesn't work out, but if what you want is actually a, behind the scenes look at how small and starting businesses grow, then this is the channel for you. Like, subscribe, share this channel. Our goal is to be able to create a community of entrepreneurs who are starting our day together, thinking strategically through our businesses, giving you a few ideas, but more importantly, giving you support. So we have been growing subscribers. We have a few new subscribers. We have interesting views. Some people watching us from Norway, so shout out to those Norwegians, which is fun. And hopefully, within a few months, my goal is that we will be able to answer your questions in chat at the end of these sessions. So I would love for you to like, subscribe, share, so we can create that community of entrepreneurs working together and starting our day with a focus on how to grow and how to grow scale our businesses in a way that doesn't drive us crazy with anxiety, how to do it confidently. So at this point, I kind of realize I'm stalling because I have challenging subject matter. I'll dive straight into the episode with a communication tip. And this communication tip is don't worry about being perfect. In fact, sometimes being imperfect is more powerful. And that is actually why I'm going to share with you some of these thoughts that I generally would be a little more private about. Because, it's easy to paint a rosy picture of I'm a positive person all the time. I don't have faults. I don't get discouraged. And that's kind of the picture we want to present to our world, but that's not really helpful. People get that all the time from everywhere on social media. And I've done a series of tips about building your authentic voice. Part of your authentic voice is being able to be vulnerable about your weaknesses. I saw this recently. It was just an artist streaming, and I was looking up figure drawing tutorials, and I wanted to look at just as a hobby thing, something to take a step back from the grind of work or all the responsibility around the house with kids, etc. And so in the evenings, doing a little bit of drawing is great. And so just someone talking about their goals, where they feel not good enough, the habits that they wish they had, etc. And it was very relatable. And I love those professional artists who have those super high quality streams and, worked in the industry and feel really professional. that's kind of nice, but there's also a limit to how much of that I can watch. And this was like probably the first time I heavily related to an artist, where they're saying like, yeah, I haven't done figure drawing every day. Here's how I'm going to try and make it part of my daily routine, because this is definitely something I want to master. And this is someone who I would love to be able to draw like they do. But like that was a powerful connection. And other people I've connected to, I mean, some of them have a persona, like a goofy persona, but they're part of that persona, and the attractiveness of it is like there is a certain genuineness to that. They will say stupid stuff. It doesn't feel heavily scripted and awkward. They're not trying too hard to be that persona. Like, even though that persona is not them, their improv in the moment as that persona is real and genuine, versus like scripted, artificial, overly concerned with the impact on other people. Really, it's the faults that make people human, whether you have a persona in your brand or whether you are genuinely just trying to communicate who you are. So lean into the faults. Another example of that is or be willing to share faults and vulnerabilities. Another example of that was on our stream previously, where we actually talked about, since Meg coaches non-native English speakers in business English and how to take their story to a global audience, I was pointing out that there was a Tai Chi series where they did have help from someone who's a native English speaker, but the actual Tai Chi master themselves presenting this course, really, he was comfortable talking in English, which was important, but like his grammar was not perfect, his accent was thick, etc. And so he developed that comfort and confidence, but that confidence didn't need to come from having the perfect words or the perfect grammar. And I'm sure his ability increased over time, but like there's a certain way in which his ability, as long as he could communicate the concepts, which he could, as long as he could do the storytelling, right? In a way, the accent, the grammar, etc., brought you into his world. It felt more authentically Chinese. And, I wouldn't put on that as an act because that would be inauthentic, right? But at the same time, that person didn't have to wait until they had a perfect mastery of English to present to an English audience. And so I feel it's like the same way. Whatever you are doing, whatever you're passionate about enough that you do more research and put more effort into it than your average person, like take that, don't wait till you're perfect, take that and share it, even if your manner of speaking is not perfect. I have a lot of things that I would like to work on, including, as I keep saying on the stream, being more concise. So I will cut that thought off right about there, but be open with your vulnerabilities. Don't wait until you're perfect. You don't need perfect communication. What you need is real communication and storytelling. So the piece that I have been procrastinating. Normally, I invite you into my work. What I'm doing right now would just be outlining different content. You've already seen some of my process in terms of looking at ads, analyzing YouTube ads, and like typing down sentence by sentence, kind of a paraphrase of what they're saying and like the purpose of that sentence. Is this social proof? Is this a call to action? Is this, creating a mystery, etc.? So you've seen that part. You see me creating a landing page template, and I did start to actually write a little bit of copy, but for the most part, I don't think there's a lot instructive in watching me do an outline, especially when copywriting is not my focus. Absolutely share what I come up with. You'll get to see my entire funnel and walk through that if you like. See, take my free workshop, etc. That will absolutely be posted on this channel. But my process of making that is probably not super helpful. If I come up with anything interesting, I'll share that with you. But that put me in an interesting place where I don't have Meg back yet, where I can interrogate her about her business. And I had the solo episode, and I just didn't feel any inspiration for like what would be helpful for you guys to film. And then I realized like, well, what kind of work am I doing or have I been doing over the weekend? I'm not building funnels. Sometimes I may do some studying, etc. But especially when I'm a single parent and here with the kids, I'm mostly spending time with the kids. And the real work that I did, the hardest thing I did over the weekend was journaling, on a topic I wanted to avoid. And I realized, yeah, that's probably something people don't see a lot of, that process. So I'm not going to read aloud my journal, but I will tell you, one, how I recognized there was something that I was avoiding, how that was impacting my work, and then how I worked through those initial unpleasant feelings really to get at the root of it, and what I learned from that process. So this last week, fairly productive. I noticed some days more productive, some days less productive, in terms of being able to focus while the kids were at school. But as the week drew on, and I think Meg had taken off, I even forget, was it just Wednesday morning? I think it was early Wednesday morning, so like Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. By Friday, especially in the evenings, what I noticed is that I was loading more and more dopamine into my evenings, right? Instead of having some more restorative routines, more like the art, right? The drawing, something that's a change of pace, change as good as the rest, but it's not just like loading me up with dopamines. Instead, I'm like compulsively listening to YouTube in the evening and playing a game at the same time, like maximum distraction. And that is one of the signs for me that there's something mentally that I'm trying to avoid, right? I start having a harder time focusing. I feel more overwhelmed. And when I have a quiet moment, I'm loading it up with stuff that I'm reading. I'm watching those YouTube videos. Then I'm avoiding my quiet late night walk that I usually use to settle my mind. I am, reading, as soon as I'm in bed, right until, I am so tired I'm starting to fall asleep. Then I put that right, and leaving no space for my own thoughts because there's something I don't want to think. All right, so that's how I realize I'm avoiding, and that there is some overdue. There's an overdue reckoning there. And for me, that is Sunday morning, where before I go to church, I carve out some space to reflect on the past week and, capture not only my goals, but a space for me to actually journal about and process, like, how do I really feel about everything that's been going on in this past week. And that allows me to like actually be able to focus at work, at church, and I guess work too later that week. Clear the headspace a little bit. And so I get down, and I just know, because I've been avoiding stuff, there's things I don't want to think, and so I let myself honestly say whatever comes out. And the first thing out of that I'm typing comes out of the keyboard is resentment, which I'm not entirely surprised about. I've been handling the kids all week. Meg is not a very clean person, which she's open about. But there's a giant pile of stuff in our room that she kind of left there. I have a clean path to my bed to the side, but because we were working on the windows, we had some construction on our windows. She pulled it away from the windows and more into the room, so it's kind of annoying. And I guess what came up as I typed that was like resentment of like I do pretty much all of the working on the house plus most of the cleaning. I do a lot of the house stuff. And Meg, for a lot of reasons, like she had surgery and that affected how she does for a couple months, busyness, travel, etc. She hasn't joined our normal family Saturday cleaning for a while, and most of what she's been doing is cleaning up her own stuff. And I type this out, and I'm asking myself, one of the questions I'm asking myself is this true? And the immediate thing that I think of is like, well, that is true of a lot of Saturdays. For instance, in a recent Saturday when we were cleaning up one of the downstairs common rooms for windows, and it was a deep clean because it was like the kids' crafting room, or they use that room the most. It's this little front room with desks and whatnot, and so they just shove paper and pens and whatnot into every possible crevice, and so like actually cleaning everything in there so we could pull the stuff away from the windows for the construction. Meg joined in that instantly without being asked. I was like, starting to do that on my own and asking the kids to be involved. So it's like, one, is this true? Just because I feel it doesn't mean necessarily that it's true, but there's something there. And then there were other areas of resentment. It's like, is that all? So was there more? And some of it is that Meg is going on conferences and I'm covering everything else and trying to work. And a little piece of me is saying, I resent that Meg is taking this time off to go to conferences, especially when, this is a business trip, but a lot of the people in, the groups that she's doing like this business trip for example, don't even know that she's a business coach and they can take lessons from her. And so there's a part of me like, if you're not actually generating leads on these trips, it's really a vacation. That part of me. And, there's a real frustration there. At the same time, I also recognized, well, she was trying, she's doing some stuff, she's moving forward, she's involving people. That doesn't necessarily mean there's leads there. And we'll kind of talk about the level of effort she puts into this and what she's getting out of it, and like, does it make business sense? Which, is a conversation to have. But when you're trying to figure out how to get leads, you will try things. I went to a conference, and that was like the first conference I'd tried to, and I didn't have all my messaging together. I didn't get leads from that. I did try and keep up with a few people and made a couple of interesting connections, but it takes practice. It's hard. And so, I have empathy for this, but there was still that resentment. And so I dug deeper into, okay, why do I resent her not getting leads from these? Like, obviously I wish she had leads, but like, why does that matter to me? And what I realized is that, and this kind of comes to the heart of probably, I think, one of my bigger regrets as an entrepreneur couple, is that I wouldn't try and start a new business at the same time as your spouse, where you don't have recurring revenue models, or at least like a repeatable customer acquisition model. So we're both in that. And I feel like, this resentful, frustrated part of me felt like, oh, well, the fact that if Meg is avoiding some of the hard work, right? The marketing, the being honest, the putting yourself out there because she just wants to say nice things, make friends, helping people is a great impulse. But right, like if you're doing that to the point where you're avoiding the actual business sense and building up a client base, then all of that work, the marketing, the putting yourself out there, then falls on me because like I have to actually make the income. And that was where I was feeling resentful. But again, I looked at that and thought, why does this matter? Like, why do I care about that? Well, because I don't have, while I'm trying to help her, I don't have the repeatable customer acquisition model that I would like to feel secure enough in that. I still feel like my feeling on the hook is partially due to my own lack of independence. If I felt 100% confident that I could run these funnel ads whenever, I have, either I find a client isn't a good fit, or, I help them hit some milestone, they make it big, etc., and then, move on to their next thing, and I have an opening, right? If I had 100% confidence that I could just like turn on a funnel or tweak a funnel and then, fill that spot with someone at the rate I would like, then I wouldn't care what Meg does, right? If my income were big enough for the both of us, and for me to be able to solo dad it whenever Meg wanted to go to a conference, and for me to get everything else I wanted around the house done, then I would feel like I wanted Meg to succeed, but I wouldn't feel like I was on the hook for anything. And if I didn't feel like I was on the hook for anything, I wouldn't feel resentful. And so there's, a part where I could spend all my time trying to like carefully adjudicate what is fair. But if But at the end of the day, the real problem is I don't feel secure in doing the things that I want to I want to be able to do. I felt I was spread thin as a parent. I feel like there's 100 things around the house that I want to fix, but I don't have the time to fix, or I don't have enough additional income to just hire someone to take care of all of it. And all of that pressure, boils down to I feel like I'm not enough. And even then, why do I feel like I'm not enough? And it's because I don't see the next step. I don't know who. It's not even just that I don't think I can be who I need to be for the next step. It's that a lot of times as an entrepreneur, you don't know who you have to be for the next step. If you just knew that, like, okay, I had to buckle down and run like 1,000 ads. All right, that sucks. Do I have the money to, spend that, 1,000 ads, or do I need to get it from somewhere? All right, I'll get it from somewhere. Like, that's not frightening. That's not terrifying. What's terrifying is the not knowing who you have to be to get to that level of success. And so, feeling the pressure on me that I need to become someone better, but I don't even know who that is. That was the point. That was the thing I was avoiding. That was what I really didn't want to think through. And all of this resentment is just defensiveness, a defensive shell around that core fear. And if I could address that, right, if I could be confident on this level, I wouldn't have to worry at all about what Meg was or was not doing, aside from my concern from her. So that was the journaling process. But the big thing that I took away from the journaling process and all this diving into the mental work, that I think was really helpful and will be helpful in me being able to push forward on work and not avoid it, right? Because what happens when you have this stress that you're avoiding, I feel more overwhelmed, and eventually I hit a point where I start procrastinating, I start putting things off, it starts eating into my workspace if I don't actually deal with this, because I am so invested in spending time not thinking about that thing that's bothering me, that sitting down and working and having to think through things allows space for those thoughts to come in. So I have to spend time listening to something else, and I'm multitasking and distracting myself while working, etc. Or just even putting off work entirely. Like, that's what happens when you avoid something, and you're avoiding it because you fear dealing with it. You don't want to take a look at what that says about you. I don't want to feel like a small resentful person, and then you don't want to deal with the fear that you have inside of all of this resentment, or I don't want to do that. So that's what happens. But that moment when you actually stare, like, here's the real fear, and you're looking it in the face, what I realized is that a good chunk of reducing that fear is just staring it in the face. I think one of the reasons why I avoid having quiet time and dealing with these difficult thoughts is I feel like I either have to completely expel my fear, or I have to have some kind of answer after I, sit down. And I don't have the answer to that core fear. I have some guesses at, like, okay, ad funnels, it's a good opportunity. I've done a lot of research, and I have the ability to copy what other people are doing and practice it till I get better. It's in my control. Like, I think it's a good shot, but I'm thinking it's a good shot from inside, like, the fog of war of entrepreneurship. I can't see far ahead. Talked to my brother the other day, and, I told him, I feel really good. I feel really good about these ad funnels. Like, I think there's a high probability of it working out, which, like, as an entrepreneur means, maybe 30% chance success. So I don't really have that answer. I have a guess, and I wish I was more confident in that, and I can't be more confident until I try it and work through it. But I don't have to have the answers. I just have to be willing to say I can sit down and stare that fear in the face. And then if I can do that, the rest of it will ease backwards, right? I don't have to spend the time avoiding that fear, which then frees up my mind. I don't have to distract myself. I'm not going to be multitasking while I'm working or avoiding work, because that might give me space in which I have to, these unfortunate thoughts come to the fore and I have to deal with them, right? So I can confront that confidently, means that like I can start working, and will that thought come into my head that like, oh my gosh, there's so many things that you wish you could be doing more, and you don't know how to do them all or who you have to be and how to get there to accomplish all of these things. um, I can stare that in the face, and that will pop into my head, and I can say, yeah, I've seen you, all right, I'm done, like there's nothing new here. And it loses a lot of its power, right? And I can do that as much as I need to, and that frees me up today. I mean, today the kids are on vacation, so I still have them. I'm gonna try and get some work done, unlike the weekend, actually work on that ad funnel, or at least do a lot of studying, note taking, and prep, so that when Meg is actually here, that I can move forward. But like I have that ability to focus and also be calmer around my kids, right? Because I don't have this fear demon riding my back, right? When my kids have tantrums, which they've had, plenty of, you can count on at least one a day, right? With young kids. So, I can be calmer for them. I can enjoy my time with them better. It's easier for me to do little things like cleaning, because same deal. The idea that I might start cleaning, but it's a quiet time in which this fear might creep into my life. It's okay. I've seen it. I've acknowledged it. I know it's down on paper. It's not ideal, but at the same time, it's not as big as it seems when you haven't actually defined all the edges of what there is. I know what it is and what it isn't. I know, like, it doesn't functionally change my path through. Like, I already have a path. So that's my process of working through the mental game. What can you learn? Just as a quick recap, you can identify avoidance in your own life. What does that look like? What are the things you start compulsively doing when you need to fill up your time? Are you avoiding quiet time alone, etc.? And what does that mental game look like? It looks like talking out with someone or journaling yourself. Not only what is the first unpleasant thing to come up, but why? Why is that thing important? Why are you angry, afraid, frustrated? Why does that matter? What might be missing in your life that makes that a big deal, right? Or conversely, like, what would it be like? What would your life have to be like if this wasn't a big deal? Like, what's the solution? And so thinking through that why, there's a simple exercise that you can do. And maybe actually this is a good time to kind of break it into the productivity/business habit of the week, I think, and say, one of the best habits you can have is journaling. Short of a coach that can hold you accountable every week, that can reflect back to you what you're saying, recognize patterns and challenge you, and force you to clarify your ideas. Journaling is the next best thing you can have, really, because if you set an appointment with yourself, you can build in some of that accountability. You do clarify your thoughts to some extent. It's not the same as having someone be able to question and give you options, different options that you can examine. But at least you do have to clarify your thoughts to either like record them in a voice memo or put them down on paper. Pro tip that people do more processing, kind of the slower and more elaborate the method. So very likely it is that I don't know, but I would suspect that like typing, for instance, you'd process that more than you would just a simple voice memo. But I do know they've done studies on like learning, and that you do learn more writing by hand because it's a slow, more kinesthetic or somatic experience, in-body experience, than just like tapping a key. Actually creating each stroke itself with your own hand. There is something about that ingrains things more in your memory. So, journal the best way that you can, but if you want to get the most out of it, writing by hand is pretty powerful. I was typing in my journal, though, I will admit. So, make that regular appointment to journal, and that will help you clarify your thoughts and gain some accountability. Now, if you're curious specifically what I was doing on Saturday, I wasn't using one particular method, but a lot of what I was doing, how I was journaling, came from two major exercises. So one is like the 7 whys exercise. So if you want to get deep into your motivation, you type out something For instance, if you want to dive into your motivation, like I want to be an entrepreneur. Why? I want to see if I can build something of value on my own, because like a reflection of my self-worth. Why do I need to get my self-worth from building something for someone else of value, right? Just go deeper 7 times why, and then you'll start to get deeper. I didn't explicitly do this, but kind of in my head, I was asking, all right, resentment, sure, but why? And kind of that, having gone through that exercise several different times, I was doing that. So that's one great thing to journal on, especially when you have, you either want to figure out what it is you want, or you have something that's bothering you and you really want to get to the root of it. The other thing that kind of influenced my journaling process that you can check out is Radical Compassion, a book by Tara Brach. And she talks, and I'll just only mention it briefly. It's kind of thing that easily could have its own video if people are interested. But she talks briefly about rain. And that's a process of recognizing what you're feeling, allowing yourself to sit with it, investigating it, and then nurturing it. And you can see a lot of those elements applied to my story. I had to sit down and give myself space to recognize, what is it I'm feeling? I'm feeling resentment. I had to be able to be willing to sit with that. My version of that was journaling and typing it out. Like, all right, I'm going to type this out, even though I don't like how it feels typing that out. And sit with it. I investigated, right? Well, why am I feeling resentment? Like, sure, but like, why does that matter for me? Why is that a bad thing for me? Why do I feel this is unfair or I'm being put upon, right? Getting into that investigation. The nurturing step I was a little bit light on, but to a certain extent, the actual process of sitting down, allowing and investigating is a kindness to myself. But there's probably a step where I could think like, all right, now that I know, I feel overwhelmed. Like, I don't know how to, take care of the kids, the house, and work all by myself. What do I need? And that would be probably a great object of a new journal entry. Is like, all right, given what I know, what do I need? What support can I give myself? And what support could I ask for from other people? So this has been a somewhat longer one, as my solo rambling ones tend to be, but I hope it's helpful seeing like behind the scenes at like the mental game of entrepreneurship. I mentioned like a couple of things I would have done differently. I teased that. I think I touched on the idea that as an entrepreneur couple, I wouldn't both be building brand new businesses at the same time, because it's stressful, and like these types of resentments are much easier to build. Although there's like different resentments you could have if someone were working full time, right? Like if I were working full time just for Meg to get her business off the ground, I could easily resent her for like not being like, I have to put off what I want to do or what I want to build so I can support her while she builds her income stream, right? Or vice versa, right? If she were, just picking the first full-time job that she could get in order to like fund mine, and entrepreneurship always takes longer than you think it will. So like, there's always opportunity for different resentment, but at least with that resentment, there would be a regular like paycheck. It would be less stress inducing. I feel like being an entrepreneur in any case is stressful. But the least stressful is if you're single and have no kids and very little responsibility, or if you have a spouse that is kind enough and in a position to actually have a full-time job and fund some of your career and entrepreneurial exploration. At least you'll be more financially stable. You should set limits, and we have those on terms of like how, what income we need by what time before we make different decisions and different arrangements. And you should have those regardless whether you're both entrepreneurs or like one is supporting the other for a time. But that was just something that like I just realized as a factor in all of this. Like, it's okay for me to be stressed. What we're doing is kind of crazy to try and both be building our companies at the same time. And then the other thing that I would have done in retrospect is we had a certain period of time where like, all right, we have a couple years of runway. All right. And rather than save up that money of runway and think of like, how can I extend that as long as possible so I can do as much learning, as much of the business by myself, I do kind of wish in retrospect, for instance, that like rather than learning all of this ad stuff and marketing stuff I've been picking up over the last few months, I'd kind of sat down and just said, all right, instead of 3 more months or 6 more months of runway, I'm just going to work with an expert. And I probably, if I did that more often, would have better results faster than, right? Because if you, for example, if you say like, hey, I have a year of runway, I'm actually going to treat that as 6 months of runway and take 6 months of that cost and then work with experts, some of that is going to be lost, right? But if you do your research well, you are going to find some people, and you don't stick with, a solution that keeps not getting results. If you're good about moving on when something doesn't work, then you'll probably find something that does work. And if you get to something that does work at 6 months, you've just bought yourself 6 months of like actual income or actual like time, versus spending the whole year spending the same amount of money and learning it yourself. You'd be at best 6 months behind the person that invested and found a solution with an expert's help 6 months earlier. Does that make sense? Right? It's like cut your run. If I had to do this long period of like acquiring your first customers that I've been through over like the past couple of years or past few years, if I had that over again, I'd cut that in half and invest a whole lot more in trying different outreach methods. So those are some of the things that I would do differently as an entrepreneur. I just want to hit that since I think I teased that a little bit at the beginning of this video. So I hope this behind the scenes has been helpful. Go ahead and like, subscribe, share if this is the kind of content you're looking for. I'll have Meg in the next couple of days, and probably Thursday, Friday, I will try and record a much shorter just message, something, so that I'm not going to live stream on Thanksgiving. Sorry, guys. But I will leave with something that is scheduled for 8 a.m. on Thursday, so that you don't break momentum if this is becoming part of your morning routine. We're live streaming every weekday at 8 a.m. and we would love to have you with us regularly. And until tomorrow, make big changes, one small habit at a time.